Hi, Mystery Recapped here. Today, I'm going to explain an episode from the show The Outer Limits called Caught in the Act. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. The show begins as we see a couple named Hannah and Jay making out in bed, but moments later, Hannah abruptly stops him and says they should not go further. Jay is visibly upset by this, but he respects her decision and backs off. It turns out the couple has been in a relationship for some time, but Hannah is adamant about not getting intimate until marriage. Jay finds the situation frustrating, but he agrees to wait because they plan to marry right after graduation. And until then, Jay's dick and balls will be bluer than the sea. After Jay leaves, Hannah lies in bed and contemplates their relationship, but all of a sudden something falls from the sky, which pierces her ceiling and rips through the wooden floor beneath it. A startled Hannah gets up to investigate and discovers an unusual object shaped like a bullet that emits smoke. Before she can figure out what it is, the object emits a bright green light that quickly enters her body. Moments later, she is overcome by a mysterious force and experiences intense arousal. This must be what God does when you don't sin. The following day, Jay is at the college library when he's approached by his friend Carl. The two begin talking about their lives, and when Jay brings up Hannah, Carl is surprised that they are still together after a year. He mentions that they must have been sleeping together by now, but noticing the disappointment on Jay's face, Carl understands the situation. He then reveals that he used to date her as well, but she never let him get close to her or even kiss her. At this moment, Hannah suddenly appears, and Jay asks her how her class went. However, she suddenly begins making out with him aggressively, prompting Carl to leave. Hannah then demands that Jay make love to her right away, catching him completely off guard. He thinks she might be acting out of pressure and refuses. Suddenly, Hannah's demeanor changes, and she seems scared for some reason. She tells Jay to stay as far away from her as possible. She then leaves, leaving him confused by what just happened. Later, Hannah approaches Carl in the library with her eyes full of lust. He is taken aback since she was just making out with Jay moments before. He asks if they had a fight, but she immediately begins to seduce him. She claims that she knows he has been wanting her for a long time. Carl tries to explain that he's dating her friend Lisa, but Hannah dismisses his words. She begins to passionately kiss him, and Carl eventually gives in to his desires. Meanwhile, Jay is in a lab, bewildered and concerned about Hannah. A professor named Hugo notices his gloomy mood and asks what's wrong. "Oh, girlfriend boning your buddy?" Jay explains what happened at the library and gets worried that Hannah may have broken up with him. He describes how she was all over him one minute and then abruptly changed her attitude seconds later. Jay mentions that Hannah isn't the type of girl who would become ready for intimacy so easily. However, the professor comments that she must have changed her mind. "Women are bizarre, man, I don't know." He advises Jay not to overlook the power of estrogen, asserting that sexual hormones are one of the most underestimated sources of energy in the universe. After a while, Jay is outside the college when he notices Hannah driving away with a quarterback student named David. He freaks out upon seeing this and decides to follow them. Later, we see Hannah and David at her house, and he mentions that he needs energy for a big game that night. However, Hannah isn't interested in his concerns and starts seducing him. The two then make out, and Hannah shockingly begins to absorb David into her body until he has completely vanished. Soon after, Jay arrives at the house and notices Hannah sleeping alone and naked in the bed. He demands to know where the other guy is, but she refuses to talk and slams the door in his face. She then feels pain in her abdomen and begs the parasite inside her to leave her alone. Meanwhile, Jay doesn't give up and stays outside her house to keep watch. He observes Hannah anxiously pacing around the house and realizes that something is seriously wrong. Later that night, she feels an intense urge to have another man and drives away. Seeing this, Jay breaks into her place to figure out what's happening. He finds the strange object in her room and notices it is pierced through the ceiling. Just then, Hannah's phone rings and a voicemail from Lisa is played. It turns out that Carl has been missing since the morning, and Lisa is worried because they were supposed to meet her parents tonight. Lisa asks Hannah if she knows his whereabouts and requests a call back. Shortly after, Jay finds David's clothes in the closet, but he didn't see him leaving, which bewilders him. Elsewhere, Elsewhere, Hannah is seen in a red light area of town, looking for a man to satisfy her desires. She is soon approached by one and she hurriedly gets to his car. Without wasting any time, she begins to make out and eventually absorbs him. The next day, Jay meets with Professor Hugaro and shows him the strange object he discovered in Hannah's room, explaining that it fell from the sky. They notice that there's a lime-like substance in it, and the professor decides to test it in the lab.
That's some weird-looking jizz, bud.
As Jay is leaving the college, he is approached by Lisa, who is very concerned about Carl's disappearance. She asks where Hannah is, and Jay mentions that he hasn't seen her since last night. Hearing this, Lisa grows more worried and assumes that Hannah and Carl must have gotten back together. But this only makes Jay furious, and he asserts that Hannah would never go back to such a womanizer. Later, Hannah is in the college bathroom, touching her belly when Lisa arrives. The two start chatting, and Lisa vents her frustration about her boyfriend's sudden disappearance. At this moment, Hannah feels a lustful urge towards the woman and starts hugging her. Lisa believes she is comforting her and hugs back, but the latter suddenly kisses her. This freaks out Lisa, and she angrily calls Hannah a weirdo before storming out of the bathroom. Following this, Hannah suffers a mental breakdown as she's being forced to commit heinous acts. She shatters the bathroom mirror in a fit of wrath and tries to stab herself with a shard. However, at the last moment, she decides not to take such drastic action and stops herself. Meanwhile, Jay is approached by a detective named Barnett, who is investigating David's disappearance. He reveals that David was supposed to be at a big game yesterday but never showed up. He also mentions that David was last seen with Hannah and his clothes were discovered at her home. Jay doesn't understand why the detective is approaching him rather than Hannah. However, the detective finds it difficult to believe Hannah could have killed someone so much bigger than herself. He assumes that Jay may have been enraged by their affair and killed David out of jealousy. Barnett also reveals that his fingerprints were discovered on David's ripped clothes in Hannah's room. Jay denies such accusations, but the detective forces him to come to the station for further questioning. On the other hand, Professor Hugaro is examining the slime from the strange object. To his shock, it doesn't match any known human DNA or other life forms' biological composition found on Earth. He then searches for information online
alienjizz.com
and comes across news about a similar object falling from the sky in the past. Later, Jay is at the police station trying to explain to Barnett that he discovered an unusual object in Hannah's room. He suggests that this object could be the cause of her strange behavior, but the detective refuses to believe him. He states that Hannah is just a promiscuous woman who enjoys sleeping with multiple men. Upon hearing this, Jay becomes enraged and insists that she's not that kind of woman. However, Barnett reveals that she was seen making out with Carl, who has also disappeared since then, and you'd have to be some kind of freak to make out with Carl. In the following scene, we see Hannah on the streets looking for her next victim. Meanwhile, a cop is watching her from a distance, ready to take action. She soon finds a man and leads him to a dark alleyway where they begin kissing. A few moments later, the cop also arrives.
Me too, me too.
And hears the man scream for help. He is horrified to see the man's body being partially absorbed into Hannah. The victim begs for help, so the cop shoots Hannah, and a green light emanates from the hole in her stomach. She claims that something inside her is forcing her to do this, and quickly loses consciousness. The victim's remaining body is then separated from her, but he tragically passes away. Nothing tragic about dying, doing what you love. Meanwhile, Professor Hugaro arrives at the police station to present his findings to Jay. He explains that similar strange objects dropped from the sky in 1929 and 1951. Hugaro claims that in those cases, women in the area went insane and attempted to seduce many men who were later discovered missing. Hugaro reveals that the slime is similar to female sex hormones, implying that Hannah is being controlled by an entity inside of her. He theorizes that since the slime isn't found in any of Earth's organisms, it must be the work of an alien species that feeds on sexual energy.
Nymphos from Mars, bud.
However, Barnett finds this story ridiculous and refuses to believe him. Just then, the cop who shot Hannah arrives, visibly terrified. He agrees with the professor's account and describes what he witnessed earlier. Upon learning that his girlfriend has been shot, Jay starts to panic and rushes to see her in the hospital. Elsewhere, a group of doctors are attempting to operate on Hannah's wound. However, they are shocked to see the injuries in her belly healing by themselves. Hannah then opens her eyes, scaring the life out of them. Everyone quickly runs away from there except one doctor who becomes trapped inside with her. Meanwhile, Jay, Barnett, and Hugaro arrive outside the room and are shocked by Hannah's situation. Jay attempts to go inside, but the detective stops him, warning that it is too dangerous. Next, Hannah tries to seduce the doctor, but he vehemently refuses her advances. This frustrates her and she begins smashing things in the room. Upon seeing this, Professor Huguro figures out that Hannah can only hurt her victims if they make love with her. Because the doctor is rejecting her, she cannot absorb him. Hannah then starts to scream like a maniac and throws the doctor around. This knocks him unconscious, and soon afterwards she also collapses to exhaustion. Meanwhile, a worried Jay pleads to be let inside, insisting that he wants to help the doctor. The detective is still hesitant, but Jay asserts that Hannah won't hurt him.
Dude, she's never touched my peen. Why would she start now?
After Barnett eventually agrees, Jay enters the room and carries the unconscious doctor outside. He then locks himself inside with Hannah, despite Barnett wanting him not to do so. After the crazy woman wakes up, they get into bed and begin undressing themselves. Seeing this, Barnett asks Huguro what will happen if she becomes intimate with someone she loves. The professor reveals that he doesn't know for certain because, in previous cases, the victims were not lovers or spouses, but just strangers. He explains that making love releases energy that cannot be measured scientifically. At this point, the couple begins making love, and a form of light emanates from Hannah's body and exits the room. It turns out that the power of their love eventually forced the alien to liberate her. In the final scene, the professor explains that the urge to hunt and kill, as well as the desire to mate and multiply, are our most primitive human drives. However, they pale in comparison to the most powerful human desire of all, the need for love. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.